While there's been three major iterations of Spider-Man over the years, it's interesting to see that Spider-Man's existed in a lot more forms than just the three major actors who have played Spider-Man in the movies. So for today's video, we thought it'd be really interesting to rank every actor who's ever played a live-action version of Spider-Man from worst to best. This will also include the three major actors from the MCU. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and some of this stuff is really interesting to look at all these years later.
Agent Romanoff, you miss me?
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Captain.
Your Highness.
Captain, big fan, Spider-Man. Hey everyone.
So coming in last on this list is actually a really weird one, but it was a TV series called The Electric Company that aired in the 1970s. It actually had Morgan Freeman on that show as a regular, but they had a sub-series in the show called Spidey Super Stories. And Spider-Man, in a really odd-looking costume, makes an appearance and has a small role throughout the episode. It's a little bit odd, especially considering the legacy Spider-Man has had nowadays and just how he's such a Hollywood mainstay, but this is just kind of a weird, interesting take on Spider-Man that's probably aimed for younger audiences, but it's a little odd nonetheless. Here's a little clip of that.
Spoil somebody's lunch by giving him a rubber glove sandwich, and spoil a dog's morning walk by not letting him near a hydrant. Spidey knows. Who else but the spoiler?
That's right, kiddies. I'm the spoiler.
Next, if we jump to 1977, there was a live-action series that aired on television called The Amazing Spiderman, not to be confused with the movies that we had a couple of years back. And this was really interesting because it was more of an episodic thing that they did, and it did get canceled after 2 years because CBS didn't want to be labeled as a superhero channel back in the day. So unfortunately, it got canceled. However, they released a lot of the episodes in groups as individual movies overseas and in other countries, but nonetheless, there's something to be said about the series. It was acted by Nicholas Hammond, who played a kind of older version of Spider-Man, and it definitely was very different from the source material, where Spider-Man's kind of this younger type of character, but it's interesting to see what they were trying to do with this character on television back in the day. Here's a really interesting clip kind of showing what the vibe of this show was back then. Okay, and then just a year later, in 1978, we got some of the wildest Spider-Man live-action related things we have ever seen out of Japan with their Spider-Man series. Honestly, this was crazy because they took the original concept of Spider-Man but mixed it with a genre known as tokusatsu in Japan, where it's kind of like an action hero fighting against villains and monsters, and it's kind of like a monster of the week type series. And this Spider-Man series is crazy. All of a sudden, he calls in this giant mech that he rides in and fights enemies with, but it's really, really fun. It has a lot of charm. It's definitely a little bit dated nowadays, but it's crazy wild. It's awesome. Here's a clip of it. It's definitely not nearly as amazing as the Spider-Man series we have nowadays, but just looking back at it, this one definitely stands out and deserves somewhat of a great mention. Okay, play the clip. Then going forward to more recent years, we're going to go ahead and put Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man on this list up here. Honestly, there was a lot of controversy and a lot of hate kind of directed at the Amazing Spider-Man movies for whatever reason, whether it's a convoluted plot or character not really fitting. Nonetheless, I really do think Andrew Garfield did a great job, and we do appreciate his acting ability. Whether or not he's a great Spider-Man's up for debate, but there's no denying Andrew Garfield is an amazing and outstanding actor, and even if the story doesn't always make sense, he was really charming to watch on camera, very charismatic, and he did a good job with what he was given to work with, and we appreciate it. We'd love to see him come back in some sort of Spider-Verse live-action movie one day. I think it would be a great addition, and be something kind of cool to see.
You know, in the future, if you're gonna steal cars, don't dress like a car thief, man.
What are you? You a cop?
Really? You seriously think I'm a cop? Cop in a skin-tight red and blue suit. You know, you're you got a mind of the true scholar, sir. I was going more for one of the guys who do the luge. Good thinking, good thinking. Use the window. Get out the window. There you go, you got it.
Then next, we kind of have to make this decision here that we don't ever want to have to make, whether or not Tom Holland or Toby Maguire is the ultimate and greatest Spider-Man. If we could choose not to, we would just say that it is a tie, but for the sake of putting this video in context of 2019, rather than kind of picking a specific time period, we're going to put Tom Holland just slightly ahead of Toby Maguire, just for the sake of having to pick one definitive one. But let's talk about why Toby Maguire was so great as Spider-Man. It was really cool because he kind of took this character that was very popular in comics and TV series like cartoons and animated shows, and he brought this character to life, and he became one of the coolest superheroes we had seen in movies throughout the mid-2000s, and kind of made it possible for a lot of the films that we got later on to be a thing. Sure, there were series like X-Men and whatnot, but Spider-Man kind of brought it into more of a lighthearted tone while also having these overarching plot lines that was captivating to audiences, and Toby Maguire did a great job at making that work. Here's a clip of Toby Maguire as Spider-Man just to kind of remind you of how good he was at this role. But then if we pivot and we look to Tom Holland, he also is an amazing actor, and what's different about him is that this actor really represents what the original source material is supposed to be. It's this young coming of age story of a character who kind of starts off almost as a child and becomes an adult throughout the process of becoming one with Spider-Man. And we've gotten to see that, and this character is witty, and we get to see him in context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is something we considered when deciding where to put him on the list. And that since we're considering the fact that he is a part of the MCU, we get to see his interaction with other Avenger characters, it just kind of knocks this one up just a little, it kind of notches this one up just a little higher than maybe Toby Maguire, but both of these actors are phenomenal. Here's one of the iconic scenes from Tom Holland in Spider-Man.
I'm gonna die.
Okay guys, that is it for today. Which Spider-Man is your favorite, but also which Spider-Man character that you've seen in this video surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video. Bye, guys.
Talking?
I'm about to.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Hi.
See you guys.
Know anybody?